Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, so I wanted to talk about some interesting poetry, and it is also the period of Pride, where I talk about LGBT poetry, and today's poem is all about eggs. I am referring to A Dead Thing That in Dying Feeds the Living, quite a title, by Donika Kelly. For those who don't know, Donika Kelly is a Black American writer who has been writing poetry for a number of years. They are also a film literary critic. They wrote a critique of contemporary Western movies, which is pretty interesting. Talked about masculinity and how it frames whiteness, which is pretty interesting. And then they've written a number of books of poetry. And what's also interesting is that they are a professor in Iowa, which is where I'm originally from. So there's that connection right there. And they're also, I believe, a lesbian. I don't know that's how Donika would exactly frame it, but that is what it appears, given that she is married to a woman. Bisexuality and all of that, but that's probably besides the point. Again, I'm trying to highlight LGBT writers during this period of Pride, and Donika's poetry has stood out to me a little bit, so this is a good chance to sort of highlight what she's saying in her interesting but unusual poems. And so without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. A dead thing that in dying feeds the living. I've been thinking about the anatomy of the egg, about the two interior membranes, the yolk held in place by the chalaise, gases moving through the semi-permeable shell. A curious phrase, the anatomy of the egg, as if an egg were a body, which it is, as if the egg could be broken then mended, which, depending on your faith, broken yes, but mended? Well, best to start again with a new body, voided from a warmer one, brooded and turned. Better to begin as if some small-handed animal had knocked you against a rock, licked clean the rich yolk and left the albumin to dry in the sun. As if a hinged jaw hadn't swallowed you whole. What I wanted, a practice that reassured that what was cracked could be mended, or at least suspended, so that it could not spread. But now I wonder, better to be the egg or scaled mandible, the small hand or the flies, bottle black and green, spilling their bile onto whatever's left, sweeping the interior, drinking it clean. I think something might have grown there, though. I know it was always meant to be eaten. It was always meant to spoil. So that was A Dead Thing That in Dying Feeds the Living. In terms of analysis, there is a little bit worth talking about in this poem. In terms of narrative, there doesn't seem to be a strict narrative here. Rather, it's the narrator discussing whether it's better to have been, the egg with potential signs of growth, or to be the mandible that's eating the egg, or the flies themselves that are just swarming over the remaining albumin of the egg. Pretty unusual sort of way of thinking about the egg. But I guess you could argue that one of the themes of the poem seems to be that of life and death, given it's about an egg. It's something that can grow into something greater. Especially what they say at the end of the poem, I think something might have grown there, though. Which does seem to offer hope in this poem, because, when, an egg, whether it be inside of a human being or laid by a bird or some other type of animal, eventually grows into something that forms its own life. And, there's some speculation about whether, an egg is fully human, within the signs of conception at birth, or it's basically pro-abortion arguments or something, but she doesn't really offer a statement about whether or not that's true or not, but there is a suggestion that it might be better to just die like talking about life or death, and the egg brings life, but the mandible that's eating the egg, or the creature that knocks it against the rock to eat the yolk, like that's delivering death. And they say there, like, what I wanted, a practice that reassured that what was cracked could be mended, or at least suspended so that it could not spread. But I wonder, better to be the egg or the scaled mandible? And that suggests, like, is it better to, be alive, or is it, I think there's a suggestion that it might be good to be dead, or it might be better to be the predator than the prey. That we're all small and vulnerable, but maybe you shouldn't be small or vulnerable, or something like that. So there's a lot of interesting things that I think Kelly is saying about death here, suggesting that the egg is going to crack, and you're going to be dead, but maybe you don't have to be dead because you can be the scaled mandible, which is still bleak because, you're delivering death to something else. Sometimes it's necessary in nature to do so, but that doesn't necessarily make it a very hopeful or positive sort of outlook. And then, there's another element of the poem, the use of the egg. You could argue that this suggests motherhood. Maybe I'm saying that because Donika is a woman, but that's out there. Donika is a woman, so with women is the idea of motherhood and eggs, reproduction in some capacity, and the idea that you want to protect your child, but maybe you can't do that for very long because there's always threats out there. I don't know if that's as deep as Donika Kelly is necessarily going into the poem, but I think that there is that kind of argument, or that kind of analysis to be made for this poem. Anyway, those are my thoughts on A Dead Thing That in Dying Feeds the Living. Pretty interesting poem that is worth reading, along with Donika Kelly's other work. So, be sure to check that out if you get a chance. I'll put a link to the poem in the description, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and possibly have a discussion here. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this poem or this author, or even Poetry Thursday if you want to participate, or just go find poetry on those days. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and egg protecting or egg eating travels. Farewell.